some audience just want their prejudices confirmed, right? So if you want to be that kind of writer, you can do that. And then some people want to be challenged and informed. This is not as many of those people. You've got to really work hard to, monopolize them, to really find them. But then there's also the third thing, actually, where people want a kind of parasocial relationship. You want to be like a kind of an interesting person. If you bring something of yourself, your personality into the writing, that helps too. People will forgive disagreeing with you if they feel like you're a real person and you're kind of interesting.
Welcome back, everybody. This is the 21st episode of the Hope Access, my new podcast. It's officially reaching the drinking age. And appropriately, we are kind of turning up the gear here. And my friend Richard Hanania is joining me as a very special guest today. Richard is a hero of scandals on the internet, also an accomplished writer, wrote the book, The Origins of Woke, and has probably one of the best newsletters in an incredibly competitive field that I always both kind of wait with a lot of hope and dread every time it drops in my inbox. I have a very well thought out theory about you being one of the most important satirists today. And I think people underestimate how good your satire and your satirical voice are. There is this adage about Chekhov, the great Russian playwright, that his parodies about the Russian ruling class were so good that almost as in a map and the territory way, the parody disappears and it becomes real and people start taking it extremely seriously. In your case, of course, this is even more complicated because you used to say things very seriously in the past that you then disavowed, which is another thing that people don't accept from you for some reason. It's very hard to get people to update their priors, as we know. But to me, it's fascinating. I have a couple of friends where whenever we talk, we're like, does he mean it? Is it a joke? Is this serious? And you somehow accomplish this in writing. And I don't know, of course, I think you're a brilliant stylist, but I have no idea how you do it. I can't find the seams in it. I find it linguistically very entertaining. I do know that in some cases you make an effort to make it look serious. In other cases, we don't know. And I'm going to use this hour that we have together to find out whether you know it or it's just something that you do very instinctually and see where it lands. Richard Hanania, do you identify as a satirist? Tell me.
No, I mean, I don't know. I think of satirist. I think of the guys who make South Park. I think of kind of comedians. I'm not really a satirist. Maybe a troll. I'm a little bit part of that culture. But I'm like a very sincere writer, I think. And I think it's so sincere, it becomes almost performance art or sort of looks artificial. And I think that confuses some people. But you honor me with your praise, Anna. That was a very beautiful introduction.
But it's the other way around as well, right? Your satire turns into seriousness, and your serious stuff sometimes goes to such, like, my favorite piece by you is why women are anti, why women are pro-choice, right?
Why women rebel against pro-life. Yeah,
that's the title, and it's one of the most well articulated cases for why educated women will side with having a right for an abortion. And you approach it from this very, very weird, almost Miss Julie angle, where you talk about the class angle of, women not wanting some weirdo from some other state to come into her very different world and make statements about what she should and shouldn't be doing with her body. And these are just extremely original takes. But I'm really, really curious how does it feel to be earnest as a troll? If you identify with trolling and you identify as somebody coming from troll culture, but then you arrive at some of these very, very sincere takes, how do you, maybe it's from this juggling that your tone comes out from? Like, help us understand this.
So, I'm sort of multifaceted. I've written a few books. I write a newsletter, and the newsletter is, as sincere as things can be. I tell people what I think. I think about, alternative arguments. I say, this is why I agree with this, or this is why I don't agree. This is what I think is true and what I think is not true. And sometimes I've done some satirical pieces. Like I've done one where I said Ronans confronts the far right. I don't know. You have to be very deep into online right-wing culture to even know what I'm talking about there. But for those who want to go to that piece, they might get something out of it. And then there's Twitter, and Twitter is like, I give it what the medium deserves. Like, it's just like such a terrible medium for like real conversations. And especially since Musk took over, it just made it into like this place where fake news and like crazy people kind of dominate. And so I've never said things that I believe are false there, or just like made things up. But sometimes I'll be sarcastic. Sometimes I'll say something that people think is true. But so there's just, there's one category, which is just sarcasm. There's another category, which is things I believe, but which I'm being earnest about, but is like exaggerated or done in a humorous way, maybe, hyperbole. So there's that too. There is like this political faction I don't like, so I make fun of them. I make some kind of joke or something like that, right? And so there's these different kinds, and they sort of, they run together, but they're like different kinds of, you could say, creative expression. This is how I use Twitter. My Substack is more just like I'm kind of a conventional writer. I think very few people do both. I think very few people are like good at Twitter and good at blog. One person told me once, you could write like op-eds. Like some people are good at op-eds, some people are good at books, some people are good at social media, and like, some people write academic articles. That's like a different kind of thing. And for me, I mean, I've written academic articles. I wrote an academic book. I've written a popular book. I feel comfortable. I feel comfortable with the written word. I feel comfortable communicating in these different forms. And I think that's a rare thing. And people see these sort of different aspects and maybe it throws them off.
I mean, I think I disagree with you on a lot of things, but as a linguistically inclined person, I am completely fascinated by how your writing works. I think I said this multiple times to my friends, often really perplexing them with my take that you have more ideas per piece than most people have ideas. And I think that's really, really underrated. And I'm in this weird way, I think your political positions are a kind of double-edged sword, because they give you a lot of ideas, of course, and motivation and passion and enthusiasm to argue your own cases, but it also alienates large chunks of the audience or confuses them with regard to how seriously to take you. I mean, you are poking at them, you are trolling them, right? And they react. And I'm really curious, do you feel responsible for who your audience is and how your different audiences react? Henry Oliver was on my podcast and we were talking about Shrek. And by we, I mean I brought up Shrek because I'm obsessed with Shrek. Because it's such a good example stylistically of a multi-layered way of telling a children's story, right? Like it works for people who know about the internal workings of Disney. It works for adults. It works for big children, small children, American children, non-American children. And is this what you want with your pieces? Like, do you want to cover this large surface area and like hope that different things will affect people differently?
Yeah, I mean, there's people who digest information in different ways, right? Some people read essays, read books. Those are my favorite people. I like people who want to. I want people to engage with arguments. Like you can't do that just in memes and videos and so forth. And so there's that, and I give something to those people. Other people, they want just like a quick anecdote or a quick chart or a graph or some kind of statistic that will maybe inform them on an issue. They don't really have the patience or the inclination to go and read an entire article. And that's a lot of people. A lot of people are like that. And then there's some people who are just kind of want to be entertained, and I think that they go based on vibes. Like it's just kind of it's like cool to be a young person and to be into this idea or to be against that idea. And I have something for those people too. I'm trying to make the things I believe cool and the things that I disagree with, and I could write long essays on why I disagree with them. But I could also just say these people are uncool. There's something dishonest or stupid or like deficient in this kind of worldview. And so like a lot of the jokes and the kind of trolling and the what you call satire is kind of in that vein. I'm trying to get a sort of large surface area of influence.
And people always love it when you point out their hypocrisies. Like that's what people love the most, especially when you point out hypocrisies they don't know they have. They always react with patience, understanding, and a kind of political openness, right?
Yeah, it's really fun. I mean, like especially with Elon Musk's Twitter. I mean, some of it I don't want my brain to be rotted by just what I see on the For You tab. I don't want to, then I'll become like Elon Musk instead of just criticizing Elon Musk. But, I do see a lot of these just kind of these right-wing people who are just very kind of like Nazis, but they're all like losers. And, there's like a funny kind of contradiction there. And just to like point out, like, this is uncool. And you can talk about why they're wrong about various issues. Or you could say like, yeah, there's hypocrisy here. There's a kind of very deep like disconnect between your views and like their internal consistency and also who you are and the way you're going about living your life.
Do you think that Musk is a hypocrite?
Hypocrite, it's
because he has this reputation, and people who know him say that, he doesn't have a subtext. The guy is like fully legible. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think he's pretty. I mean, I don't think he's very mysterious. I think he tweets all day. I know what it's like to tweet all day. You can't do an act all day. You're yourself. If you're tweeting, as much as he's tweeting, if you're tweeting 30 times a day, right? He probably tweets more than 30 times a day. That's probably an understatement. And so, yeah, I mean, he seems to be have been radicalized by right-wing Twitter, and for all his genius and obvious talents, he seems to have been radicalized in a way that's very typical, just like any other boomer dad. Like, that's what's kind of depressing about it. He's just like a 50-year-old white man who spent too much time on Twitter.
He's Gen Z, no?
Oh, exactly. Yeah,
Gen X. Sorry, he's Gen X. But yeah, you're right. You're very right. He acts like a boomer dad who like watched Fox News too much.
Somebody, who just watches too much Fox News or just looking at too many memes and like just buys into every stupid thing. And it's like, so it's recognizable. Like, you think, he built rockets, so he can't just be a boomer Facebook dad. I've been like, no, that seems to be the plainest explanation of what he is. And there's obviously he's got skills that the average, boomer dad doesn't. I mean, obviously he's built some things and done some amazing things and has a great idealistic streak. At the same time, he's got sort of psychopathic tendencies too. I mean, I'm reading the Walter Isaacson biography. It seems like his dad also had these traits. His dad apparently just would try to impregnate every woman he came in contact with, and would make things up, and like nobody could tell whether he actually believed the things he was saying. So it seems to run in the family. So I think he's like an unusually talented person who's also pedestrian in some ways and also deeply, deeply flawed in other ways.
I mean, you mentioned earlier that you like Twitter much less these days since Musk has taken over. I find myself spending way less time on Twitter. Like, I feel like this is the era of the group chats, which is really, group chats are amazing news for like the old guard like myself. Like, you gather your friends, you get all these super smart people together in different topics and different groups, and then everything. It's like a free for all. But for new entrants, it's impossible. Like, I started my career on Twitter. Interact wouldn't necessarily exist if there hadn't been something like the political and cultural sides of Twitter. And I'm not there anymore, or I'm very rarely there. And if I'm there, I try to like evade the Nazi content and like focus on the people that I like. And I'm curious, what your thoughts are on this? And if you find yourself updating your tone, your style to match this kind of Wild West era that we live in when it comes to communication and truth and discourse.
Yeah, I mean, so I've been writing a bit about this because I started out on Twitter and I had problems with the old regime. I mean, I would be suspended, shadow banned every once in a while. I wasn't growing like I should have been, frankly, based on so much attention I was able to get. They wouldn't give me a blue check and stuff like that, despite me being important enough to have one. So I had gripes against the old system. And I've been freed from that from Musk. Even though I talk a lot about him, I don't feel like he's going to suspend me, most likely. So we have to give him credit for that.
He responds to you, by the way? He responds to you sometimes, right?
He used to. He used to follow me. He used to respond to me. He hasn't in a while. And so, yeah. And so, so there was a problem with the old regime. And then the Musk, what he did was he killed the links, which is a really big deal. If you want to be an independent writer, it's very, very hard to grow. If you want to just find a community of smart people, that's also harder because it gets buried, it gets swamped by all these, these Nazis and these conspiracy theories and these fake news accounts. It used to be like you were an academic and you just, or like some kind of intellectual, you go there, and it's probably still good for that. I mean, there's probably still nothing like Twitter for making connections. I mean, people DM me, I get out, invited on the standard way to I get invited on a podcast or an event or something is still through Twitter DMs. And so, yeah, I mean, it depends on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to be an independent writer, it's much worse. It's harder. If you're just trying to connect with people in a field or people with similar intellectual interests, I think it still can be done. I mean, but there's fewer of them. That's the thing. The percentage of people who are smart and interesting and worth talking to, some of them are like you. They just stopped using it, and that's unfortunate.
And what about Blue Sky and Substack? Are you looking for? Are you looking at the other social media?
I love Substack. I love the Substack network. Yeah. That's my main. That's my main output. So yeah, Substack is great. The numbers are not the post views don't get as much as you get on Twitter, where I normally get 7 figures for a post. I wish Substack would get as much attention as the Twitter, but it's easier to monetize. I mean, it's a higher quality audience that has higher quality comments and discussion. They pay money sometimes. Some people will pay on Twitter too, but not nearly as many. Yeah, Blue Sky, it's not, I don't know. I've tried it. The people there, some of the people there are crazy. It's the craziest people left Twitter to go there, but I haven't grown enough to experience it, just because, it's it's probably higher percentage of smart people, but also a higher percentage of crazy people. And since it's not a lot of people compared to Twitter, I just don't have the time for it. I don't really bother.
Well, is there something that you can't write about?
Can't in what sense?
You define it. You want it's your fingers.
You know what? I really wish.
Not ready. The world is not ready. It can say whatever you want.
I really wish I could write biographical stuff that was honest about people I knew, people. I've met a lot of famous people at this point, and I have people from my background and people I know, and I can't write with complete honesty because I don't know, it's kind of against the norm of doing it. I've thought about doing it in fiction. I've thought about just saying screw it and just writing a memoir.
Prada, a kind of fake name. But
yeah, exactly. I've thought about doing that. So personal stuff. I always, it slips into the thing. My writing, I'll talk about, I had this friend who was had this kind of guy and this happened. So I'll do it in a general way, but I for the historical record to just be talking about my impressions of people and sort of what I'm seeing out there.
That's a good motivation to live a really long life. Just outlive everybody, and then
I'll be senile. How am I going to remember anything? Yeah, I have to take notes. Yeah, take notes. Yeah, maybe when older relatives start moving on, maybe I'll write something about my family life and that, because there's
about grandma.
Yeah, you can write about my grandma.
She wasn't who you thought she was.
Tell the truth about grandma. Yeah,
the Netflix series. Oh my god, I look forward to that. That's so interesting.
Yeah, so I've known people who've written memoirs, Rob Henderson, J.D. Vance wrote a memoir, and I just think these people, they talk about the people in their lives, but if I was talking about the people in my lives, I would do it in a very, very different way, and that's why I don't think I could write something. I mean, that's the issue. But besides the personal stuff, no, I mean, I feel pretty unconstrained in what I can write about.
How does somebody become unconstrained in today's media environment? How did you achieve? I mean, I get the memoir thing. I have the same problem, actually. I basically wrote 2 half books in 2024, and they are just too memoir-like, and I always feel there's something non-consensual about writing about other people. They did not sign up for this, and it just it feels like murder in some ways. It's just such a violent act. I get that when it's a really public figure, there's a public interest to exposing them. I get that, but when it's your family, and in my case, I have a lot of public people in my family, I couldn't do it. I think it takes a special kind of hunger to go and capitalize on the people who are unaware and maybe like not expecting that. But I'm really curious about, because we've known each other for a little bit through Emergent Ventures and Twitter. I'm always super happy when I agree with you on something, and then I'm like, this is great. But that's like once a year or twice. That's good. I think that's really good. And because my politics are super vanilla, and that would get nobody any followers anywhere. But like, how does somebody get to a position today? Sans being a gazillionaire rocket builder, but being a guy on the internet who technically can write about anything and say most things seriously or in a joking way, and still, make a living out of it, and have at least some people being not just tolerant of it, but like really encouraging and happy about you doing this.
Yeah, I mean, it's not many people, do what I do, just write completely independently and not kind of catering to an audience. So it's like, it's hard. I mean, it's hard. I think it's really hard to give people advice because it's such a singular thing. I mean, it's such a unique situation. Like, I just started writing on my Substack. I didn't think actually, I didn't set out to do that. I set out, I had a think tank. My idea was people would give me money. It would support me, and it would support maybe other people who I thought were interesting in it. I've done a little bit of that. But I didn't think in terms of like, I would have a subscription service and then people would like pay me and I could just write directly to them. And then I just started writing like things that I was interested in. And it took off. So like, what do you do if you want to write for a living? I think you have to, first of all, you have to be smart. You have to have something to say. Obviously,
write freely for a living, right? Like, write about the things that you, like, you wake up with a topic and you can just write about it, right?
So there's a couple things that an audience might want, right? Some audience just want to be, they just want their prejudices confirmed, right? So if you want to be that kind of writer, you can do that. You can appeal to rightists or leftists or whatever. And then some people want to be challenged and informed. There's not as many of those people. So you've got to really work hard to, monopolize them, to really find them. But then there's also there's a third thing actually, where people want a kind of parasocial relationship. You want to be like a kind of an interesting person. And, Anna, if you became a writer, I think you're just a very charming person. And I think people would just like be interested in what you're saying. You could have the same opinion as somebody else, but just because Anna looks very nice on camera and is just very charming, we're just, people are going to be interested in you more than they are other people.
Because tiramisu is good, said Anna Gat, right? Like, it just means something else this way. Right?
It's a beautiful name. Yes, Anna Gat.
Tiramisu is good, guys. Eat the real one. In a real dessert, only one component is sweet. America, if you're listening, you're doing desserts all wrong. Only one.
Wait, we have tiramisu. We have that.
Yeah, but every component is sweet.
What are they supposed to be?
Fingers are sweet in a tiramisu. The coffee, black coffee, mascarpone, the cocoa powder, unsweetened. So you can, the one sweet component can have contrast, and your brain can continue tasting it. That's how desserts work. America,
I like it.
We need to spread this knowledge. It's the same in an eclair, right? You have an eclair, dark chocolate, savory dough, and it's only the creme that is sweet.
No, then Claire puts me to sleep. No, then Claire, I'm sorry. I think we might just have more. We're like junkies. We've eaten so much sugar in our lives. We just need, like, I don't know, any subtle taste. I think that's gone. So yeah,
I can't eat American desserts. I try. I always try. They look amazing, and then it's like, oh no, there are 3 parts, and all 3 are sweet. We're done here. Next.
Yeah. It's so yeah, that's the point. You're fun. That's why people like you. And even if most of you are not all of us can be as beautiful and charming as Anna. We usually, if you bring something of yourself, your personality into the writing, that helps too. People will forgive disagreeing with you if they feel like you're a real person and you're kind of interesting. And sometimes,
is your persona real? Because when we talk about parasocial relationships, it goes both ways, right? It's not just your audience that has a semi-imaginary relationship with you. They think you're their friend or you're their mentor or whatever. you're also showing a kind of disembodied version. I mean, I always say that you can't be famous if you don't have at least a slight dissociative disorder, because if you take everything super personally, if you're a private person, you are never going to make it in the public. You have to have like a kind of avatar push forward. How real is yours?
No, I think I'm the same person in writing and on video and in real life. I mean, if you take it personal, yes, but I don't take things personal. But I don't take things personal in my day-to-day life either. So, like, somebody says something about me, it just kind of rolls off me either way. And so, yeah, I mean, most people can't like put on a show. Most people, it's like I do this all the time. Like I'm tweeting and I'm writing all the time, right? And so it would be like if I was playing a character, I'd become that character, right? But I sort of started out as myself. I brought myself into the public sphere, and then like I developed. But like you develop anyway if you're away from the public eye. And so like yeah, the persona and the person are like moving in lockstep at this point.
I think that's probably healthy because you're like evolving in this dialogue with them. What is your most misunderstood piece? Was there something that landed very differently from what you expected, and you feel kind of like, I don't know, there will be a sequel coming?
It's I think the pieces I think are clear. I think they have a lot of clarity. Like I don't think like I'm hiding the ball or it's like very people come away confused of what I believe. I do think the women's tears piece, I think I might have been women's tears win in the marketplace of ideas. That's like my second or third most popular article ever. I don't know. I think I probably, I don't know if this is just because misunderstood or I've changed my views over time, but I think that women's intuition, there's something to it. I think there's a lot of benefit to it in our society. Like a lot of women like think that like certain movements or like certain kinds of men are just like icky, and like it's easy to mock that from like a male autistic brain perspective. But there's also like I find that they're right about a lot, and just kind of women's intuitions. If women say like, oh, that person just really gives me this vibe that's really gross. Often you'll find out that like, the woman had some insight that you didn't. Yeah. And so, yeah, I've been thinking about maybe a follow-up like in defense of women's tears or in defense of women's intuition, because I think there's something there.
I mean, I really agree with you. And I always say that the best part of the woke movement was MeToo. And that's the one thing that I will always defend. I tend to think that MeToo was about women's relationship with each other. That was when we started renegotiating our social contract with each other as we were entering these very important positions collectively. It had become more accepted, and that was MeToo was almost like asking men to wait a little bit while we figure this out of like what's fair in love and war, so to speak. But when we think back to pre-MeToo relations, I don't think any woman would want to go back there.
I don't know if MeToo really, like, there's been change from like the 1950s, but like, I don't know. I don't know if we've changed from MeToo. I mean, I think there was a while where things went crazy, and then I don't know. I think we're probably back to where we were before MeToo, like in like not like 1950, but I think in like we're back to like 28. We're not. You're maybe out of the real world.
Paradigm shift. It's completely different.
Okay.
It's like it was a paradigmatic change in like workplaces, language. I think what's really interesting is like a lot of things that MeToo wants to save women from. It doesn't achieve it in a kind of a punitive way. Is that the men have complied? So it's, my general sense in like existing in the world as a woman is that it maybe worked in the sense that it changed men's views on this stuff. And so I would bet that looking back, it will look like a good thing.
Yeah, I don't agree.
It might have been very unpleasant to live through it for many people, but that it will. I might bet, and maybe I'm wrong, and then we can celebrate my losing this band. But I do think that's really not good. Like that's really not good part of woke.
No, I mean, as much as I love women and their intuitions, I can't I can't concur with the Me Too thing. It's like we're worrying about Me Too in a time when people are afraid to go outside and people are not getting married and having kids. It's like your country's starving and you're worried about like GMO crops or something. It's like we are kind of so far away from like healthy relations between the sexes that I hope not. I hope we move beyond Me Too. I think the problems that it was dealing with, I think we have other problems that are sort of, it doesn't help with, and it actually made worse.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other side of it, right? And then we are kind of hoping for a kind of dialectic synthesis of a third, more complicated thing at the end, but not to regress, right?
Yeah.
But the intuition thing is really interesting, and I have a lot of conversations about this with both men and women. I do think that women have, if not intuition, but we get different kinds of information about men.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot
yes, because they might want to try to sleep with you.
No, sometimes yes, but I think because women come across in many situations as lower status, showing us that somebody's an asshole doesn't matter. So if somebody's a jerk, we will see it first.
Yeah, maybe.
Yes.
But
women, like, I have a whole group chat about the women who don't like JD Vance because he gives off weird vibes. And the argument is basically like, is there an evolutionary upside to women being extremely like highly, sensitive to any sign that somebody might be creepy?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that he is, but like, what is, if there's like a 1% chance, the risk is too high, etc., etc. And I think there are women who are extremely kind of wrong about a lot of these boundaries and a lot of these categories, but I think the kind of median woman is generally right.
Yeah, I mean, so women are seen as low status. I think it depends on the women. I mean, some women have very high status just because men want to spend time with them and have relationships with them. But that's also information to how somebody goes about trying to do that, or showing interest or not showing interest in that, is also insightful. Yeah. So women are, I think they're more evolved for this. I mean, I think they're evolved to, find the right partner, obviously, and to be more choosy about their partners and to pick up on subtle signals that men are just going to miss. But yeah, they're in a kind of different relationship with men, and so that provides insights too. Yeah.
I mean, this is also why the utility of having harmony between the sexes would be like, you have to consider it extremely high, because you see one side of the information palette, I see another side. If there are no kind of arenas for these opinions to meet and mingle, we both lose. Like if men and women vilify each other's opinions, or if it becomes extremely like violent or intolerant, like there's a polarization between the sexes right now, right? It somehow somewhat overlaps with the political polarization, but there are new kind of elements to it. And I feel like we're just like missing out on each other's knowledge. Young people, old people, men, women, left, right. Like clearly it's only from the mix that we could like make something that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, young people in general are not socializing. They're not going outside. So they're not learning anything from anyone, really. I mean, that's part of the problem. And then, mixed, people have fewer siblings. So like, maybe siblings can help you kind of understand things. There's less of that. Yeah, I mean, there has to be also like a kind of honesty about what men are. Like there's this, you ever see this account like Radical Feminist Hitler?
No. Maybe I muted it. I don't know.
Yeah, she's cool. I've had her on podcast before. She's fun, but like she has a very.
What's the main thesis?
Basically that men are terrible. They just want to have sex with you and toss you aside, and are a bunch of slobs, and like I think she's right.
Really? I don't agree with this.
I think she's.
Some of my best friends are men.
Yeah, maybe you haven't seen every side of them. Like we said,
they haven't seen every side of me. I think the kind of incomplete information here is extremely mutual.
But look, there's like I'll speak about men. It's easier to talk about. Like they just want women very badly. They want relationships with women, and like there's two kinds of men in the world. There's like men who just like aggressively try to pursue women, and like men who are frustrated because they fail with women and like get very angry at them. I'm exaggerating by saying those are the only type of two men in the world, but like those are very kind of common paths to go down, right? And both of them are like, potentially uncomfortable for women because either a guy hates you or he wants something from you, and so
And they can tip into each other, right? Like
they could.
you can apply sufficient pressure for one to turn into the other, and the other way.
Exactly. Or there's like another thing where it's like so exactly. So and it's like that's male nature, and there's female nature too, where it's like they will like men based on superficial things, and sometimes they'll say they want one thing, but they'll actually be attracted to another thing, and so that's true too. But that's like it's fine. Like we are what we are, right? And we got to sort of accept what we are and be able to like somehow talk through it, or somehow like maybe it's too uncomfortable for men and women to be too honest with one another, but like there should be folk knowledge. Like women should have folk knowledge about men. Men should have folk knowledge about women, and they should share these among their brothers and friends and social circles, and so on. Right. That's what we need. That's what we need up here.
Is a problem here, right? Like having less or fewer siblings, right? If you grew up with a big family, you saw boys grow up.
Yeah.
You entered adulthood with far fewer prejudices, and it's a much more realistic.
Yeah. And again, like these numbers, these statistics on like percentage of kids going to parties or going to the mall or going to see friends, and it's like going right down with the internet and with smartphones, like especially since 2010. I mean, they're not getting human experience, and this is a problem. I think I'm a believer that our friend Tyler doesn't believe this stuff, but I'm a believer that the social media has kind of rotted people's brains. I mean, sexual relations are like one of the hardest things to get. And so like, that's one of the things I think that atrophies most once we start becoming more antisocial.
Before we move on from the whole gender question, you wrote one of my, this is one of my favorite pieces by you because I kind of semi-agree with it, and that's rare. A mate selection theory of feminization. I do think about feminization a lot. I'm a very, very disagreeable woman. So I'm like more disagreeable than basically everybody else in a group of 100 people. And I would like to say that they all, work for me. So I really enjoy working with men, and it makes me somewhat suspicious of overly feminized environments. But at the same time, I have encountered extremely male type workplaces or communities where, and this is not for sexual reasons, but like maybe the tone, maybe the relations, it was just so cold or so brutal or brutality seeking that I just didn't like it. I tend to say that maybe a more sensitive man also would not have liked it. So it's not necessarily a gender thing. But, it puts me in a very ambivalent position when it comes to feminization. I want some of it, but I also don't want the excess. Do you want to maybe speak to this piece a little bit, and whether you update very fast, you consume a lot of information, you think fast. Is there something that you would put or remove when it comes to this article? Have you changed your mind about anything?
No, I mean, I think it's an intriguing hypothesis. So the idea is basically you have monogamy, right? That's like, that's sort of the traditional culture until, 1950 or 1960 or so. And, we'll have this an attitude, men will be men, and, women are a certain way. And like, you couldn't leave your partner, right? There was very little divorce. And then it becomes, it becomes a situation where you do have monogamy. Sort of, but you also can have divorce, and people can leave one another. And there's a asymmetry kind of at the heart of the relations between men and women, is that men's status, especially high status men, does not really decline as a sexual value of a sexual partner. Women's does very precipitously. It's like the men maybe, a little bit plateaus, but or it could actually go up because he's getting rich and he's accomplishing things and rising in whatever hierarchy he's climbing up. And so, the question is, how do men signal to women that they will be loyal, right? Because this is a fundamental problem. How are high status men going to signal that they're good long term partners? And I argue the way they do so is they become kind of feminized. They have these very left wing views on gender. They say, I'm a very loyal person, but I'm also a very kind person. I don't sexualize women. I don't even think about women in my life in that way. It's not like an act. It's like you kind of psychologically adjust to the situation, right? And so what happens is the kind of high status, people, like the people of the higher socioeconomic status, the people of positions of power, become very feminized. They start acting less like typical men, and start acting more like, they start to see relationships in the way women see relationships. Oh, it's about the individual. Looks is not that important. It's about, being fair to the person and not abusing your power. And of course, MeToo and sexual harassment, like harassment law, they're like, we're always on board with that. And then you have this kind of feminized elite, and then like lower class men don't really have to worry about that as much. I mean, their sort of status is kind of more precarious. It's not consistently increasing like it is for high status men. And so you kind of have this feminized elite, and then this kind of relatively masculine, although they're feminized too compared to, say, 50 or 100 years ago, but not as much as, the upper classes. And this would explain not just personalities, but the way institutions behave. So universities become something different, government becomes something different, just because it is, so much. It's real. This stuff is really fundamental, like how we raise our own status and how we attract the opposite sex, very closely related things. This is like fundamental in shaping us. So it's like, you can't think you can get rid of something like monogamy, like make really kind of break the taboo on divorce and infidelity, and not expect to have serious downstream effects. And I think this explanation, works. I think like a lot of the explanations people have for like social trends aren't very good. It's like, oh, corporations needed us to do this, or like government wanted to create a certain kind of person. And I don't like these like kind of top-down theories. I think that culture has always been kind of an emergent phenomenon. It's something that is the result of millions of people making decisions based on local conditions and based on their own self-interest and sense of right and wrong, and sense of kind of what gains them status, what gains them mates, what lets them get ahead of other people, what improves their own situation. And so, yeah, this is I've read of some evolutionary psychology. It's a new theory. I was walking in one of these botanical gardens over here, and it just came to me, and I'm like, that's a really cool theory. I'm going to write this up.
Yeah, but I think this is probably what I think this is closer to what I mean about like Me Too winning. That Me Too is held up not by the women at this point, but by the men, just through the fact that you guys have complied. I think this is kind of the same thing, right?
Yeah.
It's the men respect Me Too more these days, I think, than how much women enforce it.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's kind of unenforceable.
It really depends on what institutions you're looking at. Like, I think look, like Trump is president.
Yeah.
And I bet like they don't have very strong Me Too norms in the White House. Like I bet on, Tesla and SpaceX, they probably don't have like very strong
I would disagree with that.
You think so?
I think that they comply. Yeah.
I think they comply, but it's like, it's obviously things have changed. It's like the 1960s and 70s. But like this stuff it's never permanent. It's never like something is one, right? You have this you had this moment, and that moment was, I think, the peak of everything. And, I think you're going to start kind of getting a step back to human nature.
Yeah.
And human nature, like I said, involves kind of this feminization, right? Because that was there before Me Too. It'll be there after. But yeah, I'm really concerned that people aren't having kids. I'm really concerned people aren't.
This is what I was going to ask you. Like, tell us, is monogamy going to survive? Will there be kids? What's going to happen? Are we turning into South Korea? What are your views?
Yeah, I don't
think, by the way, that Me Too is hurting this. Like, okay, I'm just one person here, but like since Me Too, I have been harassed insanely less.
I'm glad to see men out there still trying.
I have been.
Who's harassing you on the street, or like people?
Twice only since Me Too. Once in a completely impersonal way, and once by somebody where my first thought was like, this guy is an idiot. Like only really dumb people will harass women after MeToo, especially well-connected women. And
Well,
that's
you
a
say the
really
word harass. You
yeah
say the word harass, but
yeah.
the men, what's harassment and what is flirtation pursuing is not always clear to men.
Well, it's very clear to a woman. Yeah.
Well, yes, but it's not. I mean, that's because the woman is the ultimate decider, right? And
Yeah, but
so,
like also there are things you do to a stranger that you've never spoken with before that,
right?
you
Yeah,
know.
yeah. Okay, there are cases. There
I
are
think
cases.
harassment thinks that whether I do something about it or not, it's illegal.
Okay, well that okay. If there's
Whether
something
it's
crosses the
clear.
line into
Yeah, yeah,
legality,
yeah.
there are things that are not in the gray area. There are things that are black.
No,
Sure.
no, and but let's go back to the monogamy thing because of course it's like the topic du jour. Everybody's talking about it. You know, I'm not poly, but like I will march for your right to do it. What's up with this thing?
I don't know. I mean, is the poly a thing? Is it a thing? I mean, it's like a lot of people in San
You're in
Francisco are
SoCal, right? You're in Southern California, so even the weather is good. Like people could just
I
be.
mean, look, I live in a Los Angeles. I live in a suburb of Los Angeles. I've never met a polyamorous person. Now, no, well, not in like my. I mean, I probably met people in like rationalist events and so
Yeah,
forth. But like, how big of a phenomenon is it? I still think it's kind of seen as kind of like, a weird, very niche thing.
yeah.
I don't think it's. I don't think it works with human. I mean, people can do what they want,
Right.
right? They have the right. Is it the basis of like, a kind of social order? Like I think all human history tells us
Right.
not. Like there have been monogamous societies and polygamous societies, and even a few strange cases where a woman will have multiple husbands. And I read about this case, and it's basically it's there was some very weird ecological thing. This was in Southeast Asia, where it was like the men had to go away for a certain time, and the men would be brothers who would all sleep. So
Oh.
even if she wasn't your child, it made evolutionary sense. It would at least be your nephew or
Yeah.
something, right? And so, yeah, I mean, there's a reason that human. I mean, a lot of things change. I often don't like argument. Oh, human nature means it's always been done this way. Means we're always going to do it this way. However, but like this stuff about like personal relationships and like marriage and reproduction is pretty fundamental and pretty basic. If no society has ever had polyamory as the norm, like even if they have like like the French accept affairs, right? It's like it's like even that needed a norm of to have an affair. You have to have a norm of monogamy, right? It doesn't work if it's just a free for all. I don't think any society can function like that. So yeah, it's a thing that exists. I would not, if it was a stock, I wouldn't buy it.
We won't buy it. But what about monogamy then? Then let's go back to the social order thing. There could be an argument being made that the decline of romantic relationships or marriages somehow also undoes the social order because the traditional social order, rested on these smaller units called families. So what's going on there? Can we just like turn the world into rampant singlehood and not expect some kind of fallout of that?
So we've had, I think Japan has had below replacement fertility for generations now, probably 30 years or so. Europeans, I think a lot of European countries probably for at least 30 years, they've had below replacement fertility. So you can survive, I guess, one generation. And some places have, large scale immigration, and I don't believe the right wingers who say this is going to destroy your civilization. You could basically replenish the population, and you could be okay there. Something like South Korea, I don't know. I don't know. You have 0.7 per woman. And look, it's universal. This is why I do think it's probably the phones and the screens, because this is the only thing that like every country in the world shares since 2010. Even in the poor countries, they all have iPhones, or a lot of people have iPhones. And so, yeah, like long term, I don't know. There's going to be selection to a certain extent. But there's going to be like, a lot of kind of, just basic problems with like, society being less innovative, spending on pensions, the basic stuff, but kind of just like the vibe of like so few young people. And like, it's going to be, I don't know, not happy. I think people should have kids. I mean, it's great. It's the best thing you could do with your life. I mean, it's good for society. It's the way people want like the reverse aging. That hasn't gotten anywhere yet. It's the closest thing you're gonna probably get in our lifetimes to uh, immortality. So yeah, I consider, I do agree with Elon Musk, as stupid as he is on other issues. This is a kind of like a fundamental crisis facing humanity.
I remember the first time I was in India and boarded an airplane between like two cities inside a country. And I was on this like cheap flight, and they said, "Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys." And it struck me so strongly. And then I looked around and I realized, like, yeah, because every third person on this flight is a child. It wasn't like on a Western flight when there's like one baby and
How long ago was this though? India is now below replacement too.
It was, I mean, probably they just don't update their brand jingle, but this was 2022.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, yeah, they probably don't update
But they
it.
still,
Yeah, India, even in the third world, that's what's interesting
yeah.
about it, because yeah, even the countries that have not gotten rich yet have
Mm.
already seen the fertility decline. So it's not just a wealth thing, because 30 years ago when we were about as wealthy as, I don't know, China is today, 40 years ago, if you look at GDP, we still had a lot of kids, but now China, and India is even poorer than China, and they're below replacement. They got below replacement much sooner than Western countries did. So yeah, there's something technological, I think, going on here. It's not just a function of wealth.
That's interesting. I have an adjacent theory. I'm sure technology use, and especially recreational technology, streaming, self-entertainment, Pornhub, these things all also matter. It's not just the phones. It's not just social media. But one thing I've been meditating on a lot these days, I always have like a handful of obsessions each year. And one of my obsessions kind of came from a lot of discussions about democracy and interintellect. We're doing a Tocqueville reading group, and there are a lot of there's a lot of interest into these classic texts. Is that I think there is something wrong about the bureaucratization of the home. Something that for me, like, it rings a bell from, like, I come from a post-communist country, and there were all these like films in the 50s, 60s about how you should, create a home that is fully egalitarian, that is fully, the little pioneers march on at home, etc., etc. Here's a handbook of how to do it. And I always feel like there is something deeply undemocratic about families, about couples, about little startups. They don't conform to the basic notions of liberal democracy. You will take your child to the bus, even if he protests. A couple is never fully egalitarian. There are different powers, different, forms of leverage, but it's not sameness, right? You have a bigger family living together. Not everybody is of voting age. Not everybody, works. Not everybody pays taxes in the household. And yet, a liberal democracy can exist resting on these fundamentally undemocratic little units that are somehow the most important. And then when you internalized democracy, right? You brought it home and you started trying to clean out the home. People need arenas of exploration, of going outside these frameworks. And what happened was the home became very sterile, in some cases, literally. And all the undemocratic instincts are now pushed out into the public. And I think that's just wrong. I think we should be a little bit less egalitarian at home, whatever that means in your setup. Like, let men and women, men and men, families, startups, art groups negotiate their own social contracts, and to leave the bureaucratization in the outside. I feel like there's something there that happened. Maybe it's connected to technology in the sense that it popularized some of these ideas, but I'm always a little bit suspicious about living too rationally in the house. I don't think anybody wants that.
Yeah, I mean, not just living too rationally in the house, just even to see the decision to have kids in terms of there's a Spengler quote: "Once you see it as a matter of pros and cons, it's over, because it's never gonna make sense. Once you even start listing reasons, or you start thinking about it,
Nobody would start a company. Nobody would get married.
Nobody would get married. But then people have enough, like people are encouraged still to go have career, chase your dreams. So it's like enough, even though it's like a long shot or something that kind of seems crazy at the outset. people still go do it. But if, how many TV shows are about people, how many movies are about people raising kids? It's not particularly women, not that many. I mean, it's just not something, it's not like the media is like, don't have kids. Oh, it's so terrible if you're a parent. It's not like that. It's just relative to like everything else we could be valuing. It's not given a lot of status.
You wrote, I think a couple of days ago in Unheard magazine, I once believed that the rise of the tech right was going to make conservatism smarter, orienting the right toward a future of innovation and free market dynamism. The movement wields great influence on the second Trump administration, most notably in the form of Elon Musk and his Department of Government Efficiency. The policy implications have been a mixed bag, but one thing we can say for certain is that having some of the most accomplished people in business come into the tent has somehow made the right much dumber.
Yes.
No one embodies this paradox better than the world's richest man. Do you want to talk to this a little bit? Because I think you and I are on the same page on liberals needing to make a comeback. Maybe we have a little bit different notions on like how sexy Kamala Harris is or how bad wokeism is.
Very, very sexy, I think, is the right answer.
I'm super open to your opinion on this. I don't have my personal take. What's going on with the tech right, and why are smart people making such dumb decisions?
So I wrote an article a few years ago, Understanding the Tech Right, and I was the first person, as far as I can tell, to use that phrase. Oh. And, there's always been like a few right-wing people, particularly Peter Thiel in Silicon Valley. But then the last few years, like a lot of people who are big in tech became kind of known for speaking out on politics. So like people like Andreessen, Elon Musk, David Sachs, some of them were just starting to become conservative. Some of them had been conservative, but had been more outspoken. Even Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos, they didn't endorse Trump or anything, but they've become sort of more right wing in their public persona. And I was sort of celebrating at the time. Like one of the things I've argued about is that the right has had a human capital problem, especially since the Trump era. Trump is like, he's like catnip for like uneducated Americans and like totally repels people with college degrees. So it was it was like even 2012, Republicans won college educated whites, right? As recently as 2012. That was unthinkable by the time. And Trump has been the Republican dominating the Republican Party since 2016. So almost a decade now. And I was like, oh, here's some smart people. They're coming into conservatism. They're going to make the movement smarter. They're going to like direct it towards ideas I like too, like individual liberty, instead of like a lot of these kind of, tread and like xenophobic positions that are like sort of very core to Trump's base. And, it didn't happen. I mean, these guys, as one of my friend Alex Nawast said the other day, it showed that conservatism, the conservatism making you stupid is a treatment effect, right? It's maybe not a selection effect, because I think that once you are, you are kind of in this. Well, first of all, the evidence that they are dumb. I mean, Elon Musk. Just follow Elon Musk's Twitter. I mean, it is the lowest kind of like nonsense. Like, it's not just bad for like what you would expect from Elon Musk. If you had like a school teacher who was posting this nonsense all day, you'd be like, this is the dumbest school teacher, I've ever seen in my life. It's really bad. Things that are like, have no evidence at all, just completely unsourced, completely made up, things that are completely proven false. And he pushes these narratives and he never corrects himself, and he just does it, nonstop daily. And the Department of Government Efficiency is similar. I mean, in the sense that like, even if you like the idea of cutting government, he's gone about it the stupidest way possible. He doesn't seem to understand or care about like what the actual budget is, like how you actually make the government more efficient. There are smart people who've thought about these things. As far as we can tell, he's paid attention to none of them and is just going off of like memes and what like, these kind of right-wing influencers are saying on social media. And so, it's like somehow like the movement became less connected from reality. Like the more and more it became dominated by Elon Musk. And I think we've learned a few things. I mean, first of all, we've learned that success in one area of life, business, does not necessarily translate into wisdom in the political arena. And I think we've also learned that the bad epistemological environment of the right, the fact that there are so few like good right-wing thinkers, and the fact that like conspiracy theories and like, these sort of just like these kind of very simplistic analyses of the way the world works, the fact that that's dominating out the right is going to make anybody who maybe reacts to the left start looking for new sources of information. It's going to screw with their mind. It's going to make them, believe all kinds of crazy things. So we've seen both like kind of the negative effects of conservatism on like the human mind, and also kind of we've learned something about like, you thought this guy was a genius. No, he could be really, really dumb when it comes to politics. And that's just kind of, it's a recurring lesson throughout history. But Musk is a particularly extreme example of this.
And you wrote on this thing that I just really, really loved. Hang on, I'm going to find it. Okay. So you wrote this sentence, I think yesterday or 2 days ago, and you've sent so many pieces. That's really, you're a very prolific writer, but I think it was a couple of days ago. You say, on a different note, John Ganz has responded to my piece, responding to him on my article on Nazi salutes. He said he struggled over whether to answer because he doesn't want to treat me as his peer, but would keep it short. In response, I'm going to show how he's not my peer by keeping my own response to his response to my response to his response to my article even shorter. Ganz did not really address the main points, including how he both mischaracterized my arguments in the original piece and made unwarranted assumptions about my views. That's it. Hopefully I've gotten the last word in here and he won't come back with something even shorter, in which case I will have to grant that he is truly peerless. First of all, this is really good writing. If I was your teacher, this is A+, very good, stylistically, great satire. So John is the liberal you, right? Like you're arguing with your Harry Potter mirror a little bit. So what's the deal with liberals and how can they do better? And what do you mean by this thing that they should take, wokeism or the threat of wokeism more seriously?
I would not agree that John Ganz is the liberal version of me. Not, John Ganz is a good writer
either, but I can think that, as an impartial third party, I've had both of you, and you will come on Interact in a couple of days. He did a wonderful Interact event recently, so I'm in the middle.
Wait, you know John Ganz?
I put him on the same sofa with Shadi Hamid on the first anniversary of Gaza. Yes.
Fascinating. Okay, that's fascinating. Because
at the end, we all agreed that we believe in God, and I think that's the right point to arrive.
John Ganz said he believes in God?
Yeah.
Whoa. Wait, are we talking about the same thing?
This is what we're doing on Interact. We put you on a sofa, and we will sit there in great joy and enjoyment until we find something that we agree on.
John Ganz, the communist guy.
Yeah.
The unpopular front.news. Yeah. He believes in God.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, that's surprising.
On your religion panel as well. It was great.
Okay. Well, John Ganz.
Anyway,
I'm glad you're friends with him. Look, he's very rude to me. I've never been rude to him. He's like it, whatever. And I even I'm so high-minded. Like I even praise his work when he deserves it. He is totally dismissive of me. I don't care.
Is that typical of liberals? Do you think liberals are less tolerant?
No, a lot of liberals engage. Ganz is just an angry, mean person. Like he's not just me. He hates Matt Iglesias, right? He hates like anyone who's not a communist. I'm surprised he talks to you. Okay, so maybe he just like
he thinks I'm a communist. John, if you're listening, I'm not a communist. I am as
okay. He's gonna come curse at you now. Okay.
As any Eastern European political immigrant can be. Don't do it.
Yeah. Well, anyways, but I'm not like that.
Don't do it.
Well, I'll engage with anyone who is not like a complete like fake news person or like a complete crazy person, and he won't. He will curse at people and so forth. Anyways, what was the question about Ganz and
the liberals? You want to?
Oh no, liberals. I engage with liberals. I engage with.
They have to make a comeback, right? Or else
look. I think so. Ganz is kind of a communist, though. Communists are a different category, but liberals.
No
yes.
American is a communist. You can't be a communist in America. I have a theory about this. It's fine. It's like how you can't be an atheist in Israel. You just land and something happens to your brain.
Okay. Well, anyways, but liberals, yes. I mean, I think we need liberals. I think we need liberals because conservatives, they have not built any kind of, they can criticize the media, they criticize academia. There is very little constructive. There's a reason constructive there. There's a reason that liberals control all these institutions. It's not an accident that every institution that does something innovative or amazing is run by liberals, because conservatism is fundamentally anti-intellectual at this point. I mean, it's partly the dominance of Trump. Once you have this man who just like lies all the time, and just like to be a conservative means you have to be defending Trump. And now Musk comes along and he's like the only person who lies more than Trump does. And it's kind of an influencer driven culture, influencer celebrity driven. It's just very kind of like non-intellectual. And I think that like it's useful as a tool to push back against liberalism. I'm a fan of what a lot of Republican states are doing. I've written about this quite a bit. I mean, I think they've had remarkable success in a lot of their policies. But like kind of the national level, like the Trump, Vance, kind of Musk trifecta, that is like, that is the triumvirate, I should say. That's, that is kind of like an intellectual and spiritual, there's a darkness there. And so we need liberals to like reject the wokeness, which is self-defeating, which even if you think there's some truth to wokeness, it's like the thing that turns, half the country against you. It makes people hate you. First of all, you shouldn't be woke. It's like
it's also not a liberal trend, right? It's by default not liberal.
What, wokeness?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it depends on how we characterize these things. Yeah. We could have our own definitions, but like, whatever you are, you should reject wokeness. I mean, you should reject it on kind of self-interest grounds. You should reject it on kind of the grounds of humanity and progress. And, there has to be a kind of ability, there has to be engagement with people who are like, not exactly on board with you. And there has to be a kind of turning away from these things that discredit the left, that make people say, oh, these people don't know what a woman is, therefore I'm going to defund all scientific research. That's where we're at. That's where the Dodge thing is. I mean, that's where we are. It's basically, they're going to tell me I'm racist, therefore we're not going to send any money to biomedicine. We're not going to have an FDA that's going to be able to approve drugs. They're firing all the FDA, a lot of the FDA employees, and they're not going to, you don't get smaller government there. You just get more bottlenecks. You just get, companies not even be able to bring things to fruition. That's getting ahead of us. Like assuming even the premise that we want like pharmaceutical companies to release medicines, RFK and these people don't even want that, right? They're like so out to lunch. They believe that like vaccines are bad and like all you need is sunshine and that's it. I mean, these people are absolutely out of their minds. And so, yeah, I've soured very deeply on conservatism.
Well, that's what's good about you as a writer, and why I enjoy reading you, because you actually change your mind, right? Like you get more information, or you make an assumption the world is not working out that way, and then you're like, well, this sucks.
Yeah, the world is so complex, and you've always got to be digesting information. Like people will often, maybe they'll read some books or something, they'll have a foundation of their views, and then they will twist whatever happens in reality to fit whatever theories they started out with, right? And I try to not be like that. I try to always be learning, always trying to read, always see where I'm going wrong, see where I predict something would happen and like reality turned out a different way. Okay, I've learned something from that. And so like, I don't like change my views every day. I don't say, oh, now I'm a communist, now I'm a capitalist.
Yeah.
I pretty much consistent in like the overarching principles, but there's like the relative badness of like Trump versus his opponents. Like that's a hard question for me. And it depends on what period of time we're talking about. Are we talking about 2020 or are we talking about 2025? Different questions. Liberals are different. The balance of power is different. The Trump movement and what Trump is doing and whether Elon Musk is there, all that is different too. And so, yeah, you've got to update your worldview and you've also got to adjust to changing circumstances.
Yeah, and maybe the reason why you can do it is because you have a stable kind of core world model. And within that, you can allow yourself the flexibility of honestly responding to ongoing things. Whereas I think for most people, this can be really rigid or borrowed from the outside and not necessarily arrived at through their own argumentation. So it's much harder to defend because they don't have that, line of argumentation where they can just kind of jump around. I think you also spoke about like ex-liberals and how some of the most vicious, right-wing commentators, or even, some people in technology or the arts, or in the media, used to be liberals and then they kind of burnt out, et cetera, et cetera. I'm sure eventually we'll have the same of like returning liberals, like people who burn out on the right. And I wonder what your thoughts are on this and what you generally think about Vance. Because when you talk about, oh, there was Trump and now there's Elon, there's also Vance. And I don't see him as a very harmless participant in this game.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've known, yeah, I mean, I've known JD Vance. I think that I think he is. You talk about Generation X. He's a millennial, actually. Maybe he's more millennial. Yeah, I mean, this makes sense. I mean, Musk is
my age. He's
yeah,
my
no,
age.
he's my age too. I guess Musk really was radicalized in this kind of Gen X way, just like Facebook boomer memes, and Vance has been radicalized in the millennial way, where he is like into these like racist anonymous, right wing accounts. He's bought into this kind of national populism stuff. He's also an opportunist, and won't go against Trump, and he's played the Trump thing kind of perfectly. I mean, he's done what needs to be done in order to end up in the position that he is to become vice president. But yeah, I mean, I think I think Vance is probably less dangerous than Trump because he's not as charismatic. Trump has 30% of the country, 35% of the country. That is just a cult of personality. We have not seen anything like this in politics, where he could say up is down, down is up. He could say, he started talking about Zelensky has a 4% approval. Everyone just repeated it. I mean, he's just like Vance. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that with any other politician. So Vance is more ideological, but he's checked by other factors in the world. While Trump is kind of just has like, he's kind of like a dictator, but like for half the country. And that's quite remarkable. And Musk will probably, Musk and Vance, if Vance becomes, the nominee, him and Musk will be like equal power within the Republican Party, right? Because it's like Musk will control social media and will be the number one donor, and Vance will be the politician. Trump is really the only thing that could check Musk at this point, just because Trump just sort of stands above it all.
That's my feeling as well, that it's going to be like a Alien versus Predator situation at some point soon.
With Trump and
with Ganz and Musk, right?
I think I think they need each other. I mean, I think they'll get along. I mean, that's what I think will happen. I think that maybe Musk, who knows where Musk's brain will be 4 more years of ketamine use, like who knows? He might hate politics and he might be into, he might go, back to video games or something.
Yeah. Or maybe he returns to trying to.
So yeah, I mean, Vance is probably going to be the nominee in 2028. People, so like people should bet on that. I mean, the prediction markets, I think, are underpricing him just because it's usually the vice president. Almost always it's, and so, that's like, that's something that, we can probably count on. And then, but 2028 is probably going to be hard for a Republican to win after 4 years of Trump, so he might not get it. He might not actually get the presidency. And I mean, Musk is the wild card. Musk is like, does he get bored with this? Does he get sick of it? Do like the Democrats gain power and just like obliterate him? Like, do us all a favor. And I hope they don't destroy his companies, but like hopefully they, hopefully they get a rethinking like some of the things he's doing. That's the wild.
One did, right, with his business oligarchs at some point, right? Use them to help him rise, and then Putin did the same thing. And then
what? Get rid of the who's Putin here?
Just teaching the businessman a lesson, right? Political power is still political power.
Who's Putin here? The Democrats?
No, Putin would be if there was a Vance presidency that is antagonistic to Musk, right?
Yeah. There couldn't be. I think that's impossible. I think that's almost impossible to imagine.
Actually, one of the questions that I always ask my guests on the podcast is like, what is something in 2030 that will suddenly become obvious to everybody that is already obvious to you?
What is something that's up? I think that, I think that I've always been underselling my idea that like conservatism has become a movement for stupid people. Like I've been very strong on this movement, on this idea.
You're but conservative, no? You're a classical liberal or conservative?
I don't want to claim conservative.
You're like you.
I don't want to claim conservative. Yeah. I mean, I happen to, by some historical accident, they believe in some pro-market positions in the U.S. But yeah, I think we're going to probably see some disasters in the next 4 years. I think there's going to be a lot of problems kind of with the Trump administration. I think people will learn that neoliberalism was correct. This populism stuff was garbage. There's not, there's like, did it deliver utopia? But no, like in the 1980s and 1990s, we saw growth throughout the West. We saw absolute poverty in the world decline. We saw relative peace and prosperity, and people were unhappy with it why? I mean, they were not happy with it because some factory town, like, so what? Like, this is life. This is what happens. Like, there's some jobs that go away, and some communities have to adjust. This is like never not been like this throughout human history. The only way you don't have people losing jobs, or you don't have changes, if you have stagnation, right? And if you have stagnation, people will complain about that too. And so I think classical liberalism has looked good. I mean, I think we saw wokeness. We saw what happened there. I mean, we saw that there was a backlash to it, and it made people unhappy. It didn't solve our problems or anything like that. And now we're getting like the right-wing version of like economic nationalism, which is the other big anti-liberal idea, kind of like xenophobia and right-wing populism when it comes to economics. And you could see how the stock market, you could see what the stock market thinks of that. It's begging to go back to wokeness. And so like, yeah, all these kind of attacks from the right and left, they were both wrong. And I think by 2030, I think people will realize that a lot more than they do now.
That's actually a little bit hopeful. Like, this is the hope axis.
I'm hopeful.
I think you're hopeful. I mean, the whole premise of this podcast is that I hate the hopeless narrative. I think some things, yes, are impossible, but most things are just difficult, and we can kind of do that. And I try to increase the hope in the world by inviting people who are very productive and very smart and interesting to tell me what makes them so productive. Because productivity comes from hope, right? Like, you wake up every day and you deem it to be worth your while to do this work. That's hope. That's a kind of optimism. And I'm always curious.
Yeah, no, it's not just hope for me though. Sometimes it's kind of contempt too. It's like, these ideas are so stupid. Like, how could anyone believe this? I'm going to go out and I'm going to talk about something else. It's also, there's a positive aspect of like kind of what I do. And there's also kind of a negative aspect too. I sometimes do find these kind of emotions that people suppress sometimes to be beneficial.
Yeah. What the kind of like the closing question that I have, because I'm just really curious, like, who is somebody that gives you hope? Like, who is a public intellectual right now, a colleague of yours, a peer, or a peerless person, somebody that you look to and you think, okay, as long as this person is operating, or these people, if it's multiple, then, I'm not alone with, trying to stop out themselves to try to stop the horrible nurses from boiling their children.
Wait, who's boiling? I'm sorry, who's boiling their children?
Anyway, it's like, when you feel it's on your shoulders to stop the stupidity and the self-destruction.
Yeah. So
who makes you feel not alone with this fight?
So it's too obvious. Our mutual friend Tyler Cowen. I mean, it's such an obvious answer. The Economist just did a profile of him in 1843 magazine. He's just such a cool person. He's so like generous and so genuinely intellectually curious and so honest. And so just a great guy. And so Tyler, I love Tyler. I have, I'm going to write an article soon. You get a preview here, like in defense of the mediocre midwit, because I think that like you're a difficult midwit journalist or academic. These are people I would have made fun of like a few years ago, but like compared to like who has influence now, which is like the most lying and psychopathic and hateful people, like that's like who has influence in kind of the Trump Musk world. Just like, a journalist who just tries to get their facts right. Like they might not be the most brilliant person in the world, but like they care like about the idea that they don't make something up. Like if they're caught like committing fraud or something that's actually embarrassing in their community, which it's not among like the right-wing influencer space. So all you midwits out there, like thank you. Like you're underappreciated and you need a defense.
I want the journalist back as an archetype because, for my selfish reasons, because the journalists write the best novels. MFAs write really bad novels, and I fall asleep at the dedication page. And I want good novels from people who write a lot, and they have to write fast, and who are actually out there acquainting themselves with the real world and not sitting in some academic ivory tower. So you and I, we're on the same page here. Journalists, come back. We need you. Show yourselves. Richard Hanania, thank you so much for joining us, for sharing so generously your thoughts. And also, I hope for giving at least some of our listeners and viewers hope.
I appreciate that, and I enjoyed being with you.